Wow. Blockbuster news on the 40 acres. I got a lot of emotions going through me right now, but we'll break it all down. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. This is a special breaking live edition of On Texas Football brought to you by our friends over at Von Lane. Pete Kwiatkowski, Duane, Akina out on the 40 acres. Will Muschamp headed back to Texas as the defensive coordinator, a role he served in for 3 years under Mac Brown. Two of the better Texas defenses really in the modern era of college football, where the 08 and 09 Texas defenses under Will Muschamp, especially that 09 defense, led the nation in rushing. One of the best run defense in the country, one of the best turnover defenses in the country. Will Muschamp is back. CJ, as we let everybody get in here, you had been alluding to changes on the Texas staff. I hope everybody's been reading the tea leaves. It was a kind of a foregone conclusion that Texas and Duane Akina would part ways. But for this in one fell swoop, PK out, Will Muschamp in. Wow is all I can say.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. You know, when we talk about Texas, and we've seen it a lot from Chris Del Conte, when it comes to coaching changes, you often don't see changes until a replacement is found and ready to be made public, right? And that is no different. Steve Sarkisian taking very much a page out of Del Conte's book here in regards to his defensive coordinating position. But here's kind of the deal. And I had loosely heard of this, enough to not make me even think it was a possibility, but something that just kind of store away in the back of my brain, that Pete Kwiatkowski kind of wanted to get back to the Pacific Northwest, right? Where he was from originally when he was hired from Washington, had spent a lot of time up in that area. Something that in the last year and a half, he had even mentioned something in regards to, hey, you know what? Whatever my future is, I'll be happy. But look, committing long-term, we'll see. But this was not what I was expecting to hear today, Jeff. But I know a lot of Texas fans should be very excited about Will Muschamp's return. We'll get into that here in a bit as well. We should be hearing from Jerry Hamilton here in a minute as well. This is, of course, astonishing news on this Thursday afternoon. But here it is. Once again, Pete Kwiatkowski out, Will Muschamp in, Duane Akina out. Texas will also be looking for a safeties coach as well.
Yeah, so there was buzz that Texas, when Sark took the Texas job, there was buzz that Will Muschamp was a serious candidate to be the defensive coordinator. And obviously, you know, the tie there is both former Nick Saban assistants. They were kind of two ships passing in the night at Alabama. Will Muschamp was in his last 2 years as a head coach at South Carolina when Sark made his second stint on Nick Saban's staff at Alabama. But CJ, I think there's two things that this tells me. One, it was not a secret. It wasn't kind of an anti-Texas thing. Like you said, heard, you know, Pete Kwiatkowski in some way, shape, or form wanted to get back to the West Coast. I think you look Oregon, I believe, with Tosh Lupoy moving on, has an opening for a defensive coordinator. There's rumors that D'Anton Lynn may be moving on from SC. So, you know, a job on Lincoln Riley's staff could be in the works. But for Sark to pull this rabbit out of his hat and get back to Will Muschamp, this tells me that Sark wanting to get back to playing a more aggressive style of defense, tighter man coverage, be more aggressive. CJ, you won't find a more aggressive, blitz heavy, and it's controlled chaos really than Will Muschamp. He was phenomenal in his 3 seasons at Texas, really kept that 2010 team afloat when the offense was a disaster, was the head coach in waiting under Mac Brown at one point. Then he gets the Florida job. And man, you look, and I say this too, Will Muschamp has long been my football spirit animal. I just love him when he was the coordinator at Texas. You know, at Will Muschamp Monday press conference, a lot of the stuff was going over a lot of people's heads. They didn't like that. Hey, he's not going to dumb it down. He's going to talk football. And I love that. And, you know, Texas, you talk to Roy Miller, Brian Arakpo, guys that were on that 08 team. He got there. They played with a kind of physical, maniacal edge that Texas really hadn't had before on defense. And CJ, he's been watching his kids go through and play college football. He's kind of hanging out, helping Kirby Smart. It's kind of a part-time deal, but for him to be full bore go back as a defensive coordinator at Texas, this kind of feels like unfinished business for Will Muschamp coming back to the 40.
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, I was looking back at it a little bit, you know, because Will Muschamp, to your point, had spent about 3 years ago, or 3 years or so, 2021 to 2024, as a defensive analyst. Spent some time in the secondary with Kirby Smart over at Georgia. And I can't help but imagine what that secondary might look like next year for Texas, right? It's going to be physical. It's going to be aggressive at the point of attack. You're going to see a lot of press man, a lot like what we had hoped to see this year as well. And look, I know I'd gone to the defense of Pete Kwiatkowski as of recently, right, Jeff? I mean, look, Texas hadn't had bad defenses over the last 4 years. They, in fact, 4 straight top 30 defenses. This year, probably a little bit of a slip, especially late towards the back end of the season. But let's not forget, this was a top 3 defense in 2024. This year, it fell to about 23. But the style of play and the way that a Will Muschamp defense aligns with that of what we know a Steve Sarkisian offense, when it's fully capable, right, can be. And that marriage is very enticing to me. The secondary specifically. And again, I'm not here to bash on the PK defense at all. I've gone to bat and defended it for many a year, but I'm excited to see what might return when it comes to the press man, the sticky coverage, the ability to bring extra guys from the second and third levels, knowing that you're going to be sound in the back end. That's exciting to me. And that's something that when you look at it, who has Texas had a lot of struggles with offensively, Jeff? It's those longer athletic secondaries like a Georgia, like an Ohio State. That's something I'm seeing Texas move in the right direction to kind of mirror with Muschamp. And that's something that, boy, oh boy, if they get it right, and I have no reason to think they won't, it's exciting stuff.
I look, when you talk about Texas, I was born in 1983, right? So I'm telling my age, I'm 42. In my lifetime, and I know, look, Mike Campbell coordinated some great defenses back in the day under Coach Royal, and you can go through Leon Fuller and David McWilliams. Texas had some really good defensive coordinators. Greg Robinson was really good. I haven't seen any in my lifetime, CJ, that gave Texas the kind of edge that they had with Will Muschamp. And the beauty about him was his fronts were so aggressive. The blitzes were so well timed. The stemming, everything made so much sense. You could put any coverage behind it you want to. You want to play zone. You want to play man. You want to play cover 4. You want to play cover 2. You want to play just man free, whatever. You could play anything behind it. So, again, just to reiterate, we know a lot of people have been coming in. This is massive breaking news on the 40 acres. Pete Kwiatkowski, no longer the defensive coordinator at Texas. He and Texas have parted ways. Same with Duane Akina. He will not be back on the staff in 2026. Will Muschamp is back at Texas as the defensive coordinator, hired by Steve Sarkisian. CJ, we'll get to some super share in a minute, but I do want to read the statement from Sark that hit our inboxes a little before 2:30 this afternoon. So this is Steve Sarkisian said, quote, "We appreciate all that Pete Kwiatkowski has done for the program in his 5 years coordinating our defense and are grateful for Duane Akina's efforts in returning to the program this past year. They are both tremendous coaches and people that worked extremely hard for Texas football and the players they coached. We have had a great deal of success and are thankful for the roles they played in that and wish them the best. But at this time, we felt it was best for our program to move in a different direction, and having the opportunity to hire Will Muschamp provides us the leadership to take our defense to another level. Will is a guy I've known for a long time, always admired, and is a good defensive mind and coach as I've ever coached against. His defenses are relentless. He absolutely gets the best out of his staff and players, and is such an extremely well-respected coach. I know Longhorn Nation knows him well. He led some incredible defenses here on the 40, and I'm so fired up to be bringing him back to Texas. He'll be an awesome addition to our staff." CJ, would you like for me to read the quote from Will Muschamp, who also had a statement available in this release? Said, "This is an exciting day for the Muschamp family. We loved our time in Austin and truly enjoyed everything about working with Texas football. We're thrilled to be coming back to a program with one of the richest and proudest histories and traditions in college football. With what Coach Sark has done in rebuilding the program, knowing that there are even better days ahead, I was fired up for the opportunity. I have tremendous respect and admiration for Sark, how he leads his program, develops his team and players, builds culture, and goes about his business. I'm excited to be a part of it and can't wait to get started. Freaking hook 'em." I love everything about Will Muschamp. Now you got to have two different conversations here, CJ. And my previous place of employment, there were some folks on the national side. Anytime I would praise Will Muschamp, would remind me of his record as a head coach. But you got to separate the two. There's Will Muschamp, the head coach, who, whether it's South Carolina or Florida, could never quite get quarterback figured out, could never quite get the offense figured out. But there's Will Muschamp, the defensive coordinator, who was the defensive coordinator for Nick Saban at LSU when they won a national championship,
Right.
was the defensive coordinator at Auburn before he got to Texas, was obviously the defensive coordinator at Texas for 2 seasons where Texas won 25 games over 2 years, played for a national championship, won a Big 12 title, went 12-1, should have played, or 11-1, should have played for one in 2008. I can't say enough, CJ, about and the fact that he's had some time to be a family man, watch his kids play football. I know that was something he really wanted to do. And now that he's back revved up and ready to go, this is when you talk about grading it on a scale, the A through F scale for a hire, this is A++, in my opinion.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, you can kind of throw the head coaching records out the window. That doesn't matter to me right now. What matters to me is what he's done and what he will do as a defensive coordinator at the University of Texas. And look, 2 points I wanted to get to here, Jeff, because we've talked about it with Steve Sarkisian this year in regard to being a good head coach, right? Because he drew some scrutiny this year, right? It was the first time we've ever really had to question whether or not he deserves to be calling plays for Texas. And he said, look, that's what got me here. Well, what also got you here and what you hope to be a big reason why you remain at the University of Texas as the head coach is making very difficult decisions, Jeff. And this absolutely categorizes as one. Again, I don't believe the Texas defense was in a tough spot or bad position over the last few years.
Yeah.
But I do think with Will Muschamp, you can play a different style of football that might coincide a little bit cleaner with what this offense puts on the field.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, Jerry Hamilton should be jumping on with us here in a minute. I think it's important to note with Pete Kwiatkowski, this, CJ, I don't want to miscategorize it, but this was probably about as mutual of a decision as one could legitimately be made. And I think Sark probably felt comfortable, and I'm just guessing at this point, Sark probably felt comfortable pulling the trigger on letting Pete Kwiatkowski go kind of do his own thing, get back to the West Coast with the opportunity to hire Will Muschamp. Jerry Hamilton joining us now. Jerry, look, you and I have known each other for a long time, worked together for a long time. I'm a Will Muschamp guy. You're a Will Muschamp guy. It's hard for me to put into words how excited I am with this hire.
Couldn't be more excited myself. Look, I think he's a perfect fit in the SEC. Obviously, he's a lifer in the SEC. He played in the SEC. He was a DC under Nick Saban at LSU on a national championship in the SEC. I think it's a great hire. I think it's a great hire by Steve Sarkisian to get Will Muschamp. It's not a guy that's been out of the game and you're bringing him back to the game. He's been on Georgia's staff in some role up until this year, which really backed off so he could spend some time with Carroll and then be up there for Witt at Vanderbilt a little bit. But it's hard to lose that coaching bug, man, when you're really, really good at it like Will Muschamp is. I think it's a really, really, really good day for Texas football and the Texas defense of the SEC. I think it's a great hire.
Jerry, we talked about it a little bit, just real quick, because we've talked about the press man on the outside, the physical fronts that come with. What is it in your eyes that makes a Muschamp defense so special?
He is a unbelievable motivator, first of all. Unbelievable motivator. Right? There's that video. I don't know if we have that video, the video of him punching the board. I don't know if we could bring that up. But look, that's number one. I think he absolutely, as a defensive coordinator, brings out the best, the most energy, the most physicality. But I think he is so detail-oriented as a defensive coach. I think he has great eyes, great vision for defense. I think he's got a great mind for defense. And I think the other thing is, he is going to put all the pieces together, whether that's the personnel part or the assistant coaching part, because now we'll see what they do with Akina's position. That will more than likely be a Will Muschamp hire. But I think he just pieces the whole thing together extraordinarily well. But I think what he brings out is real, true energy. He's a very genuine guy. You got to take what do we call it? The excitement of the highs with the excitement of chewing that butt a little bit. It's going to be excitement both ways. I think he's a guy that brings out the best in every player on defense that he coaches. Guys are going to absolutely love playing for him. And what will help any of the guys who are younger, that they'll just go search Will Muschamp on YouTube now, like any of us do, or any kids do that age, or young adults do that age, is then they can go talk to Rakpo. Then they can go talk to Earl Thomas. They can talk to all the guys that played for Will Muschamp, and they're all going to get the same message. We'd run through the wall for that guy. That's our guy. They're going to get the same message, guys.
No doubt. Jerry, I remember one time talking to Lamar Houston about it, and he talked about, obviously everybody remembers the Florida Atlantic game, Will's first game as defensive coordinator. He busts a whiteboard on the sidelines, actually cut his face, and he's bleeding. And, the way Lamar described it, he said, at times we didn't know, he was going to be that intense, but it fires you up. Like, it makes you want to go play for the guy, like when he's that passionate about defense. And, we talked about it, Jerry, CJ and I were talking about it, and whether it's been Roy Miller, Lamar Houston, Sergio Kendall, any of those guys, they talk about, hey, the day Will Muschamp walked into the office at Texas and went through their first offseason together, there was an edge and an intensity that was added to the program that wasn't there before. And Jerry, dare I say, hadn't been there since.
He's different, man. He's built different. His motor runs different. We talk about players with motors all the time. Will Muschamp has a nonstop motor. So somebody's asking in the chat, didn't every text people say the same about Akina? I would place that a little different. Will Muschamp is one of the best defensive coordinators in college football, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Look, he won a national championship as a DC under Saban. He comes to Texas, right? Helps Texas get there again. If not for a Colt McCoy injury, I think, it's arguable points, right? Goes to Georgia. Look, he was college roommates, for those that don't know, with Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo at Georgia. Okay, when he played at Georgia. Goes to Georgia, big part of 2 national championships at Georgia, whether he was the DC in one of those or not, right? He was a big part of that from a game planning install standpoint. But I think Will Muschamp's a little different than what somebody in the chat asked about. And I think his whether you want to call it the skins on the wall resume, speak for itself defensively. And I'll say this again, I want to reiterate this. There's nothing about people say, well, when's the last time he was a DC? Well, it wasn't that long ago. The game hasn't changed. The game hasn't gone zip right by him. He's been part of the Georgia program. He's been part of game plan. He's been coaching in the SEC up until this year, really. So I think it's a great hire, guys. For the Texas fans, I think that aren't familiar with Will Muschamp and the younger guys out there, you're going to love him. Yeah.
The younger guys looking in my direction here. But Jerry, Jeff, I before we get to some of these super chats, I did want to ask you guys, because look, I was looking through some of the big names, especially up front, that were on the 40 acres at the time of Will Muschamp's last tenure. And you look at it, Sergio Kendall, Sam Acho, McElroy, Keenan Robb. The list is unbelievably long. Brian Arakpo, right? Jeff, in your eyes, what does that do for the guys already on campus, and what that will then attract for Texas over the next couple of months, years, whatever it might be?
He did 2 really important things when he was at Texas. One is he got the absolute most out of what he inherited as a defensive staff. Flipping Henry Melton over to defensive line, and he ends up being an all-pro. Getting them, Sergio Kendall. We can go revisit his history on Sergio, but the first 2 years didn't go the way I think a lot of people thought they would. He got the most out of Sergio Kendall. Brian Arakpo went from kind of an injury-riddled guy that couldn't put it all together to one of the best one of the best seasons a Texas edge rusher, a Texas defensive player has ever had. Jerry, one of the things when his first spring when he got there, Texas had some veterans in the secondary, and he said, no, I want my safety tandem to be Blake Gideon, a true freshman, and Earl Thomas, a redshirt freshman. And Earl was not as highly recruited as you would think he was for a guy that's got a Hall of Fame resume. But yeah. Will came in and decided, nope, those are the guys I want. He played Aaron Williams really early as a true freshman. So that's the thing, CJ. He will play guys early. If you're good enough to get on the field, he'll find a way to use you. And then, and Jerry, this is the part where I feel like maybe deep down, I don't know if Will maybe feels like he's got some unfinished business at Texas. But you look at that 2010 and 2011, those 2 recruiting classes that he helped put together at Texas, when it's Jackson Jeffcoat, it's Quandre Diggs, Jordan Hicks. He had a lot of NFL talent in those 2 classes. He never really got to see it all come together to really build the defense he was planning on building with the access to talent Texas has, especially now with the portal and NIL and everything else. I don't think, Jerry, he would have taken this job if he didn't feel like he's got the pieces and the ability, the wherewithal to build a championship defense really quick.
Oh no, I mean, look, he's been at Georgia up until this year. He was at Georgia multiple days per week. He knows the personnel at Texas extremely well, let's say. And one other thing I want to say is we bring Rod Babers in here, who I'm sure is pretty excited about this, but is Will and Carol love their time in Austin. They still have a lot of friends at the University of Texas. They come back to Austin multiple times per year. Somebody's saying, how do we know if Will Muschamp still has it? He just got a national championship ring from Georgia, 2 of them. And one of them was a co-DC. So Will Muschamp still got it. Rod, your thoughts?
I think there's a lot of layers to this thing, a domino effect. The first thing that came to my mind was, I think Sark's playing a little bit of chess here. Not only you get a defensive coordinator or a defensive mind like Will Muschamp, but Pete Kwiatkowski's no slouch, right? He's one of the best in college football himself. But Sark also gets somebody who knows that Kirby Smart defense. And one of the mountains he just can't figure out how to climb right now is how to beat Georgia and Kirby Smart. And one of the guys who's got he knows the secret ingredients, right? He's got some of that inside info on what would it take to topple Kirby Smart and that Kirby Smart defense, right? What are the weaknesses of it? Because Sark, he's figured out some things, but not enough. Will Muschamp can help you on that side of the ball too. So not only is defensive coordinator, we know that. But like I said, PK also is a very good defensive coordinator. But for Sark, I think this is also a guy that can help him figure out how to win the chess match against Kirby Smart in a number of ways. And also for Will Muschamp, I think Will Muschamp is a more aggressive defensive play caller. And I think and I think Texas has been trending toward that. Being a little more aggressive, blitz rates slowly, slightly increasing, stunt and games on the defensive line slowly increasing, playing more man coverage, that's slightly increasing. I think ultimately, Sark wants a defensive play caller that's aggressive, and that's not PK's nature. PK had to evolve into being more aggressive. He ultimately would rather kind of bend but don't break. That ain't Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp wants to break you. He ain't no bend but don't break. He's trying to break you. So I think it's also a mindset change for the Texas defense.
Rod, I want to add one more piece to that. Yet with the Kirby Georgia thing, Lane Kiffin too. Kiffin too. Muschamp has prepared at Georgia, him and Kirby and Schumann, for Lane Kiffin multiple times.
It's a great point.
To add to that, one more quick thing to add to that, this is something we talked about, Jeff, a lot about PK, right? How it took PK a little while to adapt to the ecosystem, even though it's Big 12, right? They brought in Gary Patterson. Gary Patterson gave him the cliff notes on the Big 12, like, hey, this is what you want to use. These are the coverages. These, here are the cliff notes on these hybrid spread offenses and the offensive play caller tendencies, all that kind of stuff. And now in the SEC, not that PK's not adapting and evolving, but maybe not quick enough. To Jerry's point, you get a guy like Will Muschamp whose DNA is SEC. That's where he's from, right? that's where he's born and kind of from SEC country, SEC. So instead of getting a guy who's got to adapt to the ecosystem of the SEC, let's just go get a guy who's got that in his DNA. He is SEC, and I think that also kind of is a different point.
Yeah, massive news again.
Massive.
Just to rehash. Will Muschamp back as the Texas defensive coordinator. Pete Kwiatkowski, Texas have parted ways. As a result, Duane Akina and Texas have also parted ways as well. I wanted to mention this because I saw some comments in the chat. The Texas players are aware of this, right? The news has been made. If you go through any of the Instagram stories, Twitter accounts, whatever it is of Texas defensive players, they've commented on it. I've seen Colin Simmons, Xavier Philson-Me, Tyler Atkinson added a couple flame emojis next to the announcement as well, but a lot still to dissect here. We have plenty of super chats that I wanted to get to. The first one is a big one.
Rod,
y'all get your necessary hats here because that's a big.
CJ, you need to get a hat, brother. Jeff, you need to get a hat.
I need a hat. Yeah.
But let me get to it real quick. Hello, massive news here. Keep in mind this was 14, 15 years ago. Does he still have that intensity, Jerry? I know you commented on that a little bit. What players for sure are we losing this year? Hook 'em. Thank you, Zach.
Does Will Muschamp have the same intensity? Hell yes, he does. He was just part of 2 national championship teams at Georgia. And in his year where he hadn't been coaching, you know where that intensity's gone? To that damn poor Titleist ball off the tee. And that thing is ready for him to get back into coaching. Guys like Will Muschamp never lose their intensity, Rod.
Yeah. And it's to be around Kirby, you can't lose it around Kirby because Kirby is dialed up to 100 all the time. So I think that, being in that arena with Kirby, I think it kind of keeps him with that edge. There's no doubt about it. Everybody in that program's got to have an edge.
Right. So, Jerry, you brought this up a little bit ago. You look at Will Muschamp after he and South Carolina parted ways in 2020. He goes to Georgia in 21 with the thought that he's going to be an analyst. Scott Cochran ends up having, his issues that have been documented and he's talked about. And Kirby needed, hey, you need a special teams coordinator. And Will Muschamp for that 2021 Georgia team is a special teams coordinator. Then he's the co-DC. So to your point, Jerry, it's not like he's just been hanging out on the beach, just not really doing anything. I mean, he's been coaching some high-level games the last few years.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, when he wasn't an on-field coach at Georgia, he was huge in the game plan, opponent study, all of that on a week-to-week basis. And he was on the practice field. Even if he wasn't an on-field assistant, he was a big part of working with Schumann, getting game plans together, scouting opponents. He has not been out of the game. He's been with players. And one of those years, he was out recruiting as well when he was on the field. So he's not removed from the game. This year was the most removed from the game he's been in, I don't know, since he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I'll say this too. This is a much better Will Muschamp surprise story than the last time, Jerry, we covered a Will Muschamp surprise story, which was this time about 15 years ago when during the middle of the football banquet, we found out he was leaving to take the job at Florida. So yeah. There's a much better piece of news here.
There's a very funny story with that. By the way, I just happened to know this story. He called Kirby Smart and said, I just got the Florida job. And Kirby said, you're in me.
That's how it goes. Getting back to a couple of the super chats. This one from Justin Yarborough. Big and shocking move. Who will call the defense in the bowl game, fellas? And what does that do for recruiting on the defensive side of the ball, Jerry? What do you think about that?
I don't have that answer right now. I do not have that answer right now. So LaMarcus Myers says self-scouting has just got graded quite a bit. I don't have that answer. Look, recruiting on the defensive side of the ball, this is a staff thing. Like, look, will Muschamp have massive input? Obviously, he'll have massive input. But again, this is full staff. It's like anytime there's a assistant and everybody's like, on the offensive side, oh, this guy, he's not recruiting good. It's a staff thing. It's the whole thing, right? All offers still go to the top Steve Sarkisian's desk for a sign-off in recruiting. It's never changed. It will never change. Will Muschamp will have massive input in recruiting, obviously. He's got a ton of background. He's seen a lot of really good NFL players in his days. And so he will be a massive part of that. But we also have – does this mean guys are just going to start committing to Texas? Not in the NIL world. But I'll tell you what it does. It's his energy, his ability to talk to and communicate with guys will get kids fired up about potentially playing at Texas. That I can tell you.
Yeah, I'll tell you this too, Jerry, from a talent evaluation standpoint and his ability to build relationships in recruiting. I know times have changed since he was last at Texas, but what shocked me was, I think it was that 09 class, his first full cycle at Texas. I don't know if people remember, he got Texas to the table as one of the last two for Drake Kirkpatrick and for Jarvis Jones. That's two guys that ended up being first-round draft picks. And Texas hadn't been in on out-of-state guys like that at that point. So he, to Jerry's point, not only does he know ball, he knows players. And Rod, you told me a long time ago, you can mask a lot of your deficiencies on offense if you got a competent quarterback and a really good scheme. If you don't have players on defense, you're going to get exposed. Will Muschamp's inheriting players, and now he's got the ability to go get players.
Yep. No, I agree with that. And like I said, overall, I just think his mindset and his play calling are just more aggressive. And I think ultimately that's what Sark wants. He wants to say more aggressive style defensively to counter, at least to complement what he's doing offensively.
Yeah. And by the way, let's just say this. That doesn't mean it's press coverage 100% of the time with every player, Rod, because nobody's like that. But to Rod's point, and James Richards, resident Georgia fan that comes on our shows, players love this guy. That's been true of Will Muschamp in every stop he's ever made in coaching.
Absolutely. Getting back to a couple of the super chats right here. Some Medina Gaming 3231. Wow, what a move by Sark. He got himself an SEC defensive coordinator. No more soft coverage and 2-minute drills. No more dropping Colin Simmons back into coverage. Rocky Ford, a lot of the same. We've seen a couple of these Colin Simmons drop back into coverage here. But look, the point is this. This is a huge addition out of the physicality, right? You know, the guys up front, and I mentioned a couple of the big names earlier, is this as much of, hey, this is an SEC level guy that knows the ins and outs of the conference as anything else?
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think I think that's part of it. I think, look, Sark has wanted to be more aggressive on defense. He's talked about it. And hey, I said during the season, I said at some point, you got to show me you're going to be more aggressive. You got to stop talking about it. Well, this is one way to show me you're going to be more aggressive. And controlled chaos is how I described the Will Muschamp defense earlier. We've seen Texas defensive coordinators that can dial up exotic blitzes and do that, but Will Muschamp, it's so controlled, it's so disciplined. And Rod, you just talked about it a minute ago. You can play whatever coverage behind it you want. You want to play man, you want to play quarters, you want to cover three, whatever. His fronts were so good at Texas, and they've been so good where he's been that you can play whatever coverage you want behind it. But I think, CJ, to me, the bigger picture is, if you're Sark, you don't make the decision to part ways with PK. And look, we know it's been no secret, like I said earlier, that PK has been wanting to get back to the West Coast if he could. You don't make this decision and pull the plug on it unless you've got an upgrade lined up. And I think for what Texas needs, I'm not saying Pete Kwiatkowski is a bad coach, because he's not. He put together some really good defenses at Texas. But for what this program needs right now, I think they upgraded.
I don't know if y'all hit on this before I jumped on, or Rod jumped on, but this was Sark's first offer as a DC when he was hired at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if y'all covered that before I got on, but
a little
that's
bit.
A fact. That's a fact. He was the number one guy that Sark went after as a DC when he was hired at Texas. And the timing was not right. Well, Will Muschamp had a son that was going to Georgia. He had another son in high school. I think his wife, Carol, just wanted them to all have some family time together, stay in the Athens area. And then Will got back into on-field coaching. He was the 22-23 co-DC and safeties coach, Rod, which is something else we may need to talk about here. Mm-hmm. He was the DC linebackers coach at Auburn, at LSU, and at Texas. But he's also been a safeties coach early in his career, because he was a safety. And he was at Georgia as a co-DC because Schumann was coaching linebackers. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with this secondary hire, Rod, because it's obviously going to be either Muschamp or a Muschamp hire. So it'll be interesting to see which way this goes.
My initial reaction, Jerry, immediately, Travaris Robinson's followed Will Muschamp everywhere he's been. He's the co-DC and the safeties coach at Georgia right now. I'm not reporting that as fact or anything. I'm just saying every time Will Muschamp's changed jobs, Travaris Robinson's been his guy.
I'll throw this out there too, because I think one of the things that also, I mean, you look at Texas this season and the amount of like pass rushing talent they have. You talk about the edges. I think I'm going to say maybe that Sark was dissatisfied with the amount of havoc they created overall defensively too. That group, considering the talent they have up front, they're like, man, you guys should be creating way more havoc. And right now, I just feel like, and one thing that Muschamp's good at, we talk about Sark scheming guys open, and that's an offensive thing, right? To scheme a guy open in the passing game. But you can scheme fits as well on defense. Muschamp's really good at that. In 2008, he showed that when he had a beast like Brian Arakpo and Sergio Kendall, that I can scheme one-on-ones for these guys and scheme matchup advantages for these guys. And I wonder if Sark, obviously, you guys joking about dropping Colin Simmons back in coverage, but there's a great saying by Will Muschamp when we covered him, Jeff, and he always said,
I get to use it freely now. Yes.
Thoroughbreds don't go backwards.
That's right.
Thoroughbreds don't go backwards. Why the hell on any down, let alone third down,
Rod, why are you bringing me back to this?
Dropping back in coverage.
Why are you bringing me back to this, Rod?
That's okay. So I honestly, what might have sold the ball on him is Will Muschamp might have just said that, like, dude, why you got Colin Simmons dropping back in coverage on third down? That Yeah, that don't make no damn sense to any damn body. And that kind of it's like that's a microcosm of the lack of aggression. It's like, hold up, third down, you got the best pass rusher in the country potentially. Drop back in coverage. I don't give a damn if they do know he's pass rushing. Your change up ain't fooling nobody. And in fact, you're only helping the offense when you're doing that. So I know that's me being overly critical because I think PK did a good job. But maybe that's one of the reasons that Sark wait. No, this is my last season with. We always talk about the last season with Arch Manning. It's your last season with Colin Simmons.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that here too.
So if you want to maximize Arch Manning, yeah, we get that. Go on in the O-line, go get a running back, go get all the weapons, on offense. But you also got a guy that may be a top 10, top 15 pick on defense. Have you went all in for him yet? Because he's getting double-digit sacks just on his right now without being schemed up with matchup, scheme fits and matchup advantages.
I want to add this because people have asked about the recruiting part of this. Here's what is really good news for Texas fans on that front. Will Muschamp is part of the Georgia staff. He's watched all of these guys in recruiting that were highly recruited, that Georgia offered, other guys that Georgia and SEC programs are offering. Lance Jackson, all these guys that were recruited at that level. He knows the talent at Texas. He knows what it is because he was at Georgia. He was in those meetings. He knows what's at Texas. So that's good news because no way he takes the job if the players aren't there and he can't add to it.
Absolutely, guys. Before we move forward, Jeff, we do have a sponsor for this episode, and then we're going to get into a ton of super chats because, the line is out the door, basically, when it comes to questions about this hiring. But, Jeff, real quick, if you would, a quick word about our friends Von Lane.
Von Lane, as the holidays draw near, travel season is officially here, but it doesn't have to be stressful, whether you're heading to Austin for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's trips. Von Lane makes getting there easy. You'll board in minutes at a hotel terminal located just minutes from your destination and settle into one of the 22 oversized seats. More space, comfort, no crowds. Enjoy Wi-Fi, snacks, beverages, and hot towel service on every trip. I know Jerry likes that, and so does Rod.
Yes.
I do too. And on select routes, savor complimentary meal service delivered right to your seat. Von Lane takes the grind out of regional travel so you can focus on what really matters, the people and the experiences waiting at the end of the ride. Book today at vonlane.com and use the code OTF25. That's OTF25 for $20 off your first ride. Von Lane, it's a private jet on wheels now serving Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Plano, the Woodlands, Nashville, Memphis, Atlanta, and Knoxville.
Good deal, Jeff. Thank you very much. Now let's get to some of these super chats. There's been plenty of questions right now in regards to not just the bowl game, but also the scheme that Will Muschamp brings. I wanted to get y'all's thoughts fully. Isaiah right here asked very much the same. Who's going to coach the secondary now? What's the big changes there? Do we have any idea on what that might come with as well in regards to what additional changes? Just a dude, thank you very much for the super chat. Is it too early to know essentially what is next for this defensive staff? Jeff, I'll throw it to you first.
I guess for me, for the bowl game, look, Johnny Nansen can call the bowl game. The bowl game to me is, I don't want to say it doesn't mean anything, but it's inconsequential at this point. I would think as far as for other position coaches, I think it depends on, does Will Muschamp want to coach a position? And what position does he want to coach if he wants to coach a position? If he just wants to be a roving defensive coordinator, then you hire a safeties coach and you go. Obviously, he's got to evaluate the guys on the staff. But, Jerry, I knowing the way he values defense, he knows enough about Kenny Baker and Alan Clark and Johnny Nansen and the guys that he's got on staff to make those decisions. To me, I can't answer that question without knowing, does he want to coach a position or not?
Yeah, I don't have that answer right now on what Will will do with this and what he will do. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how this kind of all comes together. Some people have asked in the chat about a Blake Gideon coming back. He's a DC at Georgia Tech. Yeah, he's on an upward trajectory. So we'll have to see how it all plays out. I don't have the answer right now. I just know that I love what Will Muschamp coordinating a defense. I love the energy he brings. I love the physicality he brings. And again, for the chat, we've had so many people join us. Thanks for the support here. I don't even know how many people are on this right now. Over 5,000 combined from YouTube and Twitter. This is another thing I think we need to talk about again because all the people are joining. Everybody's like, oh, this helps Texas against Georgia. I think it's more than that. I think it does. But LSU with Lane Kiffin. LSU with Lane Kiffin. LSU going to Lane Kiffin changes the game at LSU. Lane Kiffin is a tremendous in-game play caller. Tremendous. Not good, tremendous. Will Muschamp's called defense against him. Prepared for him.
The other thing I'll throw out there too, Jerry, and I've tried to put this in perspective, just having followed this program as long as I have. This reminds me of, you go back to that offseason between 03 and 04 when Bull Reese was a really good defense. Rod, you played for Bull Reese. Bull Reese was a great defensive coordinator at Texas. I just think it got to a point where his schemes, his mindset, the way he thought defense was no longer compatible with where the Big 12 was going. So Mac brings in Greg Robinson and Dick Tomey, and it changes the defense for the better. I think the same thing happened in 07, going into 08, where Coach Akina and Larry McDuff were running the defense, and that defense had gotten you to a certain point, and you had to evolve. And you brought in Will Muschamp. I just feel like Sark wouldn't have made this move if he hadn't felt like, hey, this defense as it's been constructed has gotten us to a point now to get us over the hump to the next level. Where does it need to go, Rod? I think that goes back to what you said. Hey, you got one shot to get this right with Colin Simmons, a guy who's probably going to be a top 5 draft pick. You got to go all in on what's the best way to do that. If it's a coordinator change, then I think you make that change. You can't, we talked about it a lot, guys. You can't afford to think, what's this going to mean 3 to 5 years down the road? You got to think, what's this going to mean for the next 12 to 14 months? That's the window you got to look at right now.
Absolutely. Yep. We got another big super chat. Rod, grab the helmet again. Y'all got, I got it. I mean, there we go.
There you go, guys.
That's just good stuff. Is this Sark being tired of the lack of physicality notion? And this is a very aggressive move by him, sets the tone for next year and beyond. Legacy building move. Rod, you got the helmet on. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I do. I think it ultimately is. It's just, this is Sark rolling the dice and saying, yeah, it's what we have now. It's good. You can count on PK. There's a certain standard PK has established. But if I want to get to the SEC mountaintop, and we're talking about college football playoff championships, I think he believed that he had to make a change defensively, and he couldn't wait for PK to evolve to it. And from PK being a West Coast guy, originally a Pac-12 kind of guy, I think he really, his mindset and his mentality and philosophy translated much better to the Big 12. And I think Sark panicked a little bit about how well and how quickly he would evolve to the ecosystem of the SEC, which is physicality and aggression. And honestly, like I said, I still think he was a little disappointed, as was I, by the way, in the lack of havoc plays by the front this year. And somebody brought up in the chat, I mean, we talked about Anthony Hill, guys, over and over again, and how great of a pass rusher he was this offseason, and how this guy should be in a conversation to get double-digit sacks for Texas this year. But he wasn't. He still made great plays, but I think for me, I feel like he was underutilized and not weaponized enough on the edge as a pass rusher. A guy can make havoc plays. So I think Sark is looking at certain players, Colin Simmons too, and saying that's one of the factors, saying I need somebody that's going to give me absolutely everything out of these top-notch, top 10 potential picks. Like Anthony Hill dropped in the draft prospects a little bit. A lot of people saying he's going to be like a second-round pick now potentially. And a lot of that I think is because Texas did not confirm that he's an elite pass rusher from the linebacker position, which he is. The analytics would bear that out. But you didn't do that this year. And I think that's why you see a lot of people put 3-4 linebackers ahead of him right now, because they're looking at guys saying, well, these guys are good linebackers. Yeah, but Anthony Hill was an elite pass rusher, and Texas didn't even use it this year. They didn't even use it, in my opinion.
I think I think the game that really irked me was Florida defensively. And here's why. Because the 2 previous games, the way LSU and Miami got after the Florida defense, you did the opposite. You did the opposite of what they did to make Florida suffer offensively. That was the thing for me where I was lost with PK. You cannot, if you can't take what the 2 previous opponents of Florida did to make life hell on DJ Lagway, and by the way, he was hurt. Florida had 130 yards against Miami. And a lot of that was early in the first quarter. If you can't look at that and say, I have to change what I want to do because of what I need to do to beat an opponent, you aren't my guy. Moving on.
Hey, in that same conversation, Jerry, I mean, we've talked about it from PK's bend but don't break, right? We've talked about it in the sense that Muschamp wants to kind of get in your face and dictate the game in his own ways. This super chat from Dylan, what will the base defense look like? Does he have a specific 4-3-3, 4-3-3? Is that, is he as versatile and flexible with his schemes from that perspective, Jerry?
I think he's multiple, Rod. I mean, you've watched him as much as I have. He's not a guy. Look, these guys that, are products of, yes, you have a base of what you want to do, but you're multiple as well. And Will Muschamp's not going to be hard-headed like that. He's never been. Guys that coach under Nick Saban are not hard-headed on the defensive side of the ball. Or the guys that he really loved, the Muschamps, Kirby Smarts. You have your go-to, right, Rod? But you also have versatility. And that's what makes you really good defensive coaches is you adapt to who you're playing. You don't square peg, round hole people. You're multiple in what you do.
Yeah, you have to be. Offenses are way too sophisticated these days. You can't go out there. Nobody is that dominant to just roll out the same personnel, same group, same scheme every down. You got to be adaptable. So he's pretty modern in terms of he's a multiple defensive coordinator. He'll throw out multiple schemes depending on the matchup that you see week to week.
We have something special for Texas fans coming up, CJ. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to get y'all's favorite Muschamp moments, but of course, I think this just tops the list.
Is the volume down?
Let's go. Everybody eyes up here. Look, they are getting this set right here, right? And they're running zone G and they're running chop. We call it chop. We got to get there. The bucket's got to get there and get flat. Corner's got to come through. The safety fits outside. Will's got to be here. Everybody see that? Gap control. Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Oh, I love it.
Oh. Love it.
Boy, it's good, isn't it? It's fun to recap that one. In that same vein, I mean, do you have another moment just similar, not similar to that, because I think that stands alone, but for someone who wasn't 11 and 12 years old at the time of Muschamp roaming around the 40 years old, tell me something that gets me excited based off of, I guess furthering the conversation of what we've already had. Jeff, I'll start with you because I know you got plenty of stories, intel, whatever, locked up.
Okay, I'll try to be quick because there's three, right? One is his first game against Florida Atlantic, where after the first defensive series, he busted a whiteboard on the sideline on his face and was like bleeding down the side of his face. That's one. Two, that same year against A&M, Sergio Kendall almost broke Stephen McGee in half, and Muschamp went to give him a chest bump. And I don't know if Will Muschamp ever vertical jumped that high in his life, but he got on that. And then maybe the best game he ever called, they're playing at Oklahoma State in 09, and it's Zach Robinson, Des Bryant. They had a really good offense. And they start out the game, and Muschamp and Rod, Bull Reese, I've heard he did this at one time too, but Muschamp just basically got the defense on the huddle after the first drive. He's like, all the stuff we game planned all week, forget it. We're scrapping it. We're throwing it out. I'm calling it on the fly. They turned Zach Robinson over 3 or 4 times and beat Oklahoma State by 30. So it's just there's a lot of really good Will Muschamp stories.
And by the way, this doesn't mean Texas is finishing #1 in the country in defense, but I do love the hire. I want to say that. My funny Will Muschamp story is I'm not going to name the prospect, but I was at a high school and I was at a practice, and Muschamp and Applewhite rolled in, and they were evaluating the same guy I was there to see. And I walked over and said, "Hey, what's up? What's going on?" And Muschamp looked at the defensive back, and he was a toes up guy, Rod, like his toes kind of pushed up through the shoe.
Yeah.
Toes up, stiff, can't run, can't take him. Strong evaluation.
Wow.
I love it.
Did that prospect end up making the cut somewhere, Jerry?
He was not a high-end player like he was ranked.
Well, there we go. And typically, when guys like that have an eye for talent, it ends up being just as simple as something like that.
Speaking of evaluation, before he left, I think the last 2 guys that he evaluated and signed off on offers were Duke Thomas and Hassan Ridgeway.
Yeah,
both ended up being NFL players. So, again,
I've got a couple questions more for you guys, and we only have a handful more super chats, so I'll get to those here in a sec. But I don't know if it's too early to kind of sit here and say which players on this roster this move impacts the most, but is there anybody immediately? I don't know if it's Colin Simmons. I don't know if it's a Tyler Atkinson, but is there anyone immediately that comes to mind when you look at this 2026 team and say, okay, because of this change, because of this philosophy impacting what's coming to the field next year, they're set for a change and possible improvement?
Outside of Simmons is the easy one. Outside of Simmons, Rod.
Lance Jackson.
May agree.
Okay.
Guy that can play multiple shades up front. You can move him around the front. He loves guys like that too. So I think Lance, other than Colin Simmons, of course, Lance Jackson. Yeah.
There's Justice Terry for me. Just thinking about what Will did with similar body type guys. Henry Melton and Lamar Houston were similar body type guys. So Justice Terry jumped out to me immediately.
Good deal. We'll only go a couple more minutes longer. I know that this has been a heck of a Thursday afternoon live stream, but for all fun reasons, right? To sit here, rehash, and kind of celebrate the hiring of Will Muschamp. If my camera ever comes back, I don't like how I'm looking here, but again, I did want to rehash it. Will Muschamp back as the Texas defensive coordinator. Pete Kwiatkowski and Texas have parted ways. Another pending move of this decision was also Duane Akina no longer will be returning to Texas as the secondary and safeties coach. Going back to Pete Kwiatkowski, I had heard loosely for about a year now, he was looking to get back out to the West Coast. Obviously, Jeff, you mentioned it earlier. USC might be losing D'Anton Lynn to Penn State. Oregon has an opening after Tosh Lupoid took the Cal job. Now there's a couple of spots opening at big-time schools out on the West Coast. We'll see how the dominoes ultimately fall. But Texas and Will Muschamp paired up once again. Steve Sarkisian making a big splash on this Thursday afternoon. Now it's about filling out the rest of the spots. And again, I think we've all kind of come to the understanding it's just a little bit too early to tell what's next for a number of these position coaches. Jerry, I'll let you wrap things up here before we get out of here.
Yeah, look, I mean, my biggest thing, Rod, before you jumped on here is it's energy. It's aggression. It's physicality. It's mentality before you ever get to the X's and O's with Will Muschamp. I think he's just one of those guys, and it's wherever he's been as a defensive coordinator, a defensive coach, that he just has the ability to make guys run through the wall for him. And that is like where you start in coaching on defense. Will these guys run through the wall for said defensive coordinator? Now we get down to the X's and O's and putting the guys in the right position. But these guys on defense will be challenged in the right way. There will be aggression. There will be physicality. All of it will be required, and he will get it out of the players. There is no doubt in my mind about that, about Will Muschamp. No doubt. Zero.
Yeah. Rod, do you share a similar sentiment as that?
Yeah, I think, schematically, I do think, what Sark wants to do and being more aggressive and creating more havoc plays, creating more chaos. I do think that is also that's going to translate really well to the complementary football that Sark wants to play. I think he knows the ecosystem of the SEC and is really knowledgeable of the ecosystem of the SEC because he grew up in it and coached in it as part of his DNA. That was not the case with PK. PK had to adapt to it, so I think that's big. And also, Jerry's right about the physicality. I mean, listen, guys, Kirby Smart called you out. He did the game.
Absolutely.
And some of y'all just want checks. He was talking about Texas, guys. Okay, let's be honest. He was talking about Texas. Talking about Texas and all the money that Texas got to pay a lot of players, including guys like Justice Terry and Tyler Atkinson from up there. And he's saying, y'all can take that check, but just so you know, he said, we down here in Georgia, we pay our players, but we get physical. And he essentially called out Texas and said, we're more physical than you. Will Muschamp will not accept a defense that is not physical. The scheme and all that aside, and technique and fundamentals aside, you must, to touch the field with Will Muschamp, have a physical presence at every position. So that will be an increased. That intensity of physicality will be increased with his defense. And I think ultimately that's something Sark wants too, the aggression and the physicality. He thinks that's going to be the SEC to him, maybe the kind of the thing that puts him over the top, right? That's ultimately is going to give Texas the edge, the SEC edge they need defensive. They've been good, but Sark thinks they can be better. And I agree, they can be better. And I think he believes that Muschamp is going to get them there.
And then, Jeff, wrap us up entirely. You've been around for a lot of Texas football teams. You've seen Muschamp before. with the way that this roster stacks up and what we know about being all in for 26, is this the move that you envisioned, or what's to come?
Well, I just saw some of the chat say, if he's so good, why hasn't he been at DC the last 5 years? Well, he was the co-DC and safeties coach at Georgia in 22 and 23. And last I checked, those Georgia defenses were pretty damn good. And he was a special teams coordinator in 21. He won a national championship with Nick Saban. Nick Saban took him to Miami, to the Dolphins when he left LSU. So look, here's the other thing about Will Muschamp too. Will Muschamp's only 54. So it's not like you got a guy that's like going to play out the last few years here that's looking for a check. Like, no, this is a guy that's still hungry. I think still has something to prove. Look, I just go back to it and to kind of tie together what Jerry and Rod have said. I just remember Roy Miller's the guy I remember hearing it from first. When Muschamp first got to Texas, that first offseason workout, they said, man, it is an intensity and a maniacal edge that nobody in that room was prepared for, but they fell in love with it pretty quick. And, that was the special thing about those 08 and 09 defenses. You look back at it, the 08 defense led the country in sacks. The 09 defense led the country in interceptions and led the nation in run defense. So he put together really productive defenses when he was at Texas. And again, I think he's got something to prove. Jerry, I just go back to the way he left Texas. That 2010 season didn't go the way anybody wanted. And you look at the guys he was recruiting, the kind of defense he was trying to build, to not do it. I think now to have the opportunity to help Sark and this program get over the top and win a national championship. Plus, he's not lying, and Jerry's not lying when he said it either. I mean, I've talked to enough people around the program, like Will Muschamp and his family. They loved Austin. He's still got a few guys close to the program that donors and guys that he hunts with on his hunting season. So like it's not just like, oh yeah, he coached some NFL guys. Like, no, him and his family, they loved Austin. They loved Texas. So again, PK did a great job while he was at Texas. Can't take that away from him at all. But I think the combination of him wanting to get back west and Sark saying, if I'm going to pull the plug and make a move, I got to have an upgrade. I think you went out and got yourself an upgrade.
Absolutely. So one final time for us here at On Texas Football, Will Muschamp back as the defensive coordinator on the 40 acres. A massive move by Steve Sarkisian as we head into really the true offseason of this 2025-2026 season. Duane Akina out, Pete Kwiatkowski out. So a lot of dust still to be settled when it comes to how this defensive staff will ultimately fall. But you'll find everything here at the channel as well as over at ontexasfootball.com. You can come be a member of our community real quick over at ontexasfootball.com. Use the promo code OTFOG, $39.95, get you the annual subscription. I'm just going to go out there and put it on a limb. Fantastic Christmas gift. Fantastic for anybody in the market for one right now. But we'll have you covered over there as well as here. But for Rod Babers, Jerry Hamilton, Jeff Howe, I'm CJ Vogel. And this has been a breaking news edition of On Texas Football. Y'all have a good one. Happy Thursday.
Boom.
Welcome.
Hook 'em.